She walked in quietly, speaking broken English. The staff ignored her, smirked, moved on to more important customers. But hours later, they stood frozen as she returned to sign the contract that would make her their boss. The boutique stood at the heart of the city's most affluent district, its glass facade gleaming under the mid-morning sun. Gold-lettered signage announced Maison Elegance, a name synonymous with exclusivity and sophistication. Inside, the air was lightly perfumed with notes of oud and jasmine, and soft classical music drifted from hidden speakers. Polished marble floors reflected the glow of crystal chandeliers, while racks of meticulously curated clothing, silk dresses, tailored blazers, and cashmere scarves lined the walls. Mannequins draped in avant-garde designs posed in dramatic vignettes, each outfit a statement of wealth and taste. This was no ordinary store. It was a temple of luxury, where every detail whispered prestige. The clientele matched the ambiance. Young professionals in sharp suits and stiletto heels glided through the aisles, their voices low but confident as they discussed the latest collections. A group of influencers, their outfits a kaleidoscope of designer logos, posed for selfies near a display of leather handbags. Locals, mostly. They moved with the ease of those accustomed to being seen and served. Sales associates, dressed in sleek black uniforms with gold name tags, hovered attentively, offering flutes of champagne and personalized styling advice. The store buzzed with the quiet energy of privilege, a world where appearances were currency and status was unspoken but understood. Into this scene stepped a woman who seemed, at first glance, out of place. She was older, perhaps in her late 60s, her face etched with fine lines that spoke of a life richly lived. Her attire was simple, a loose linen blouse in soft beige, paired with dark trousers and sensible flat shoes. A woven straw bag hung from her shoulder, its frayed edges hinting at frequent use. Her hair, streaked with silver, was pulled into a neat bun, and she wore no jewelry save for a thin gold bangle that caught the light as she moved. Yet there was something in her posture, straight-backed, deliberate, that suggested a quiet confidence. Her eyes, bright and curious, scanned the store with an almost childlike wonder, as if she were stepping into a gallery rather than a retail space. The woman paused near the entrance, her gaze settling on a display of jackets. One in particular caught her attention, a tailored piece in vibrant red, its fabric shimmering faintly under the spotlights. She approached it slowly, her fingers brushing the air just above the sleeve, as if hesitant to disturb its perfection. After a moment, she turned, searching for assistance. Spotting a young sales associate nearby, she offered a tentative smile and spoke, her voice soft but clear, tinged with an accent that marked her as a non-native speaker. "Excuse me, I look, jacket, red one?" Her words were halting, each syllable carefully chosen as if she were piecing together a puzzle. She gestured toward the display, her expression hopeful. The sales associate, a woman in her 20s with sleek hair and a practiced smile, glanced up from her task, arranging a tray of silk scarves. Her eyes flicked over the older woman, taking in the plain clothes, the straw bag, the hesitant English. For a brief moment, her smile faltered, replaced by a subtle arch of one brow. She straightened, smoothing her uniform, and offered a curt nod. "One moment," she said, her tone clipped, before turning away to assist a younger customer who had just approached, a woman in a form-fitting dress, clutching a designer clutch. The younger customer laughed loudly, tossing her hair, and the sales associate's smile returned, warm and eager, as she launched into a detailed description of the latest arrivals. The older woman stood patiently, her hands clasped in front of her. She watched as the sales associate fawned over the younger customer, pulling dresses from the racks and offering effusive compliments. Other staff members moved through the store, their attention fixed on the more ostentatiously dressed patrons. A man in a tailored suit was ushered to a private fitting room. A group of women sipping champagne was presented with a tray of exclusive accessories. The older woman's presence seemed to go unnoticed, as if she were a shadow in a room full of light. Minutes passed. She shifted her weight slightly, her eyes drifting back to the red jacket. She took a step closer, studying its stitching, the way the fabric caught the light. Her lips curved into a faint smile, as if she saw something in the garment that others might miss. Emboldened, she approached another sales associate, a young man with a polished demeanor, who was adjusting a display of cufflinks. "Excuse me, sir. The jacket, red one. Can I see?" she asked. Shiroshin, her voice a touch firmer this time, though still gentle. The young man glanced at her, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. He took in her appearance in a single, swift appraisal, then offered a tight smile. "It's quite exclusive," he said, his tone implying that exclusivity might be beyond her reach. Before she could respond, he turned to greet a couple who had just entered, their laughter filling the air. "Welcome back," he called, his voice suddenly warm. He gestured toward a display of leather jackets, leaving the older woman standing alone. A soft scoff came from nearby. Another sales associate, a woman with red lipstick and a haughty air, leaned against a counter, whispering to a colleague. Her eyes darted toward the older woman, and her lips curled into a smirk. "Probably just browsing," she murmured, loud enough to carry. Her colleague stifled a laugh, turning away to rearrange a stack of folded sweaters. The older woman's smile faded, but only for a moment. She tilted her head slightly as if processing the moment, then straightened. Her gaze lingered on the red jacket one last time, her fingers tightening briefly on the strap of her bag. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if confirming something to herself. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the exit, her steps measured and unhurried. The glass doors slid open, and she stepped out into the sunlight, her silhouette briefly framed against the gleaming facade before she disappeared into the crowd. Inside, the store continued its rhythm, laughter, clinking glasses, the rustle of shopping bags. The sales associates moved on to their next customers, oblivious to the weight of the moment they had just let slip away. The city's pulse thrummed outside, a symphony of honking taxis and hurried footsteps. But in the memory of that morning, the scene rewound to reveal the woman who had walked unnoticed out of Maison Elegance. Her name was Madame Lin, a name that carried weight in circles far beyond the glittering boutique. At 68, she was a titan in the world of fashion, though her unassuming presence belied the legacy she had built over decades. Born in a small village in Vietnam, where her mother taught her to weave intricate patterns by hand, Lin had transformed her childhood craft into a global empire. Her brand, Lin Atelier, was synonymous with artisanal excellence, hand-stitched garments that blended tradition with modernity, coveted by celebrities and collectors alike. Lin's designs were not merely clothes, they were stories woven into silk and linen, each piece bearing the soul of her heritage. Her collections had graced runways in Paris, Tokyo, and New York, earning her accolades from critics who called her work poetry in fabric. Stars wore her creations on red carpets, their elegance amplified by the subtle details, embroidered lotus motifs, delicate beadwork, or asymmetrical cuts that seemed to defy convention yet felt timeless. Yet Lin herself remained elusive, rarely granting interviews, preferring to let her work speak. She was a woman who thrived in the background, her influence felt rather than flaunted. This week, Lin had traveled to the United States for a purpose that could redefine her legacy, a major American fashion house. Sterling & Coney had approached her for an exclusive collaboration, a capsule collection that would marry her artisanal craftsmanship with their global reach. The deal was monumental, a bridge between East and West, and Maison Elegance, the boutique she had visited that morning, was one of Sterling's flagship retail partners. The contract was set to be signed later that day, but Lin had wanted to see the store for herself first, not as a celebrated designer, but as an ordinary customer. Her decision to visit incognito was deliberate. Lin had learned, over years of navigating the fashion world, that true character was revealed in unguarded moments. She wanted to understand how Sterling's retail arm treated its customers, particularly those who didn't wear their wealth on their sleeves. She had seen too many brands prioritize flash over substance, catering to the loudest wallets while dismissing those who didn't fit their image of luxury. Lynn's own brand was built on a different ethos. Every person deserved respect. Whether they arrived in haute couture or humble linen, that morning, she had chosen her outfit with care, a simple beige blouse and trousers, comfortable yet elegant in their understated way. Her straw bag, a gift from a weaver in her village, was a quiet nod to her roots. She wore no makeup, no ostentatious accessories, only the thin gold bangle that had belonged to her mother. To the untrained eye, she might have been a tourist, perhaps a retiree indulging in a bit of window shopping, but to those who knew her, Lynn's presence was magnetic, her quiet confidence a force that needed no embellishment. As she had stepped into Maison Elegance, her heart had lifted at the sight of the displays. The red jacket that caught her eye was not unlike her own designs, bold yet refined, a piece that demanded attention without shouting. She had wanted to feel its fabric, to study its construction, to see if the store's curation matched the reputation Sterling & Co. had built. Her halting English, a language she rarely used in her day-to-day work, was no barrier to her intent. She had approached the sales associates with genuine curiosity, hoping to engage, to learn, but the response, or lack thereof, had told her more than any contract could. The dismissive glances, the curt replies, the subtle smirks had painted a picture of a store that valued appearances over humanity. Lynn had stood there, absorbing the moment, her face betraying none of the disappointment she felt. She was no stranger to being underestimated. Her career had begun in a world that often overlooked women, especially those from small villages in Asia. Yet each slight had only fueled her resolve, teaching her to wield her influence with grace rather than confrontation. As she walked out of the store, her steps unhurried, Lynn's mind was already turning to the afternoon ahead. The limousine that would carry her back to Maison Elegance was waiting, as was the meeting with the store's director. She had no intention of revealing the morning's experience. Not yet. Her power lay in her ability to observe, to listen, to act with intention. The sales associates who had dismissed her would soon learn who she was, but more importantly, they would learn what she stood for. Lynn's smile, as she stepped into the sunlight, was not one of defeat but of quiet certainty. She had seen what she needed to see. The boutique's polished exterior hid a flaw, one she would address in her own way. Her brand was not just about beauty, it was about dignity, about honoring the human behind the customer. And if Sterling & Co. wanted her name attached to their stores, they would need to embrace that ethos. As she walked down the bustling street, blending into the crowd, Lynn carried the weight of her purpose with ease. The world might not yet know the power behind her smile, but by the end of the day, Maison Elegance would. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city's upscale district, bathing the glass facade of Maison Elegance in a golden glow. Inside, the boutique hummed with a different kind of energy than it had that morning. The staff had been briefed, hastily but with urgency, about an important visitor arriving that day. A renowned designer from Asia, the manager had said, her voice tinged with excitement and a touch of nerves. She's here to discuss a major collaboration with Sterling & Co. Be on your best behavior. The sales associates, usually poised and unflappable, buzzed with anticipation. They straightened racks, polished glass surfaces, and exchanged whispers about who this mysterious designer might be. The young woman who had dismissed the older customer that morning, whose name tag read Claire, adjusted her hair in a mirror, her earlier smirk replaced by a practiced smile. The young man who had brushed off the same customer, Ethan, checked his phone for updates, eager to make an impression. The store was a flurry of preparation, every detail scrutinized to ensure perfection for the VIP's arrival. Outside, the street grew quiet as a sleek black limousine glided to a stop in front of the boutique. The driver, clad in a crisp uniform, stepped out and opened the rear door with a deferential bow. A murmur rippled through the staff as they gathered near the entrance, their eyes fixed on the vehicle. The manager, a tall woman in a tailored blazer named Ms. Harper, stood at the forefront, her hands clasped tightly, her smile radiating warmth and professionalism. A figure emerged from the limousine, and the air seemed to shift. It was her, the woman from that morning. Madame Lynn stepped onto the sidewalk, her appearance unchanged, the same beige linen blouse, dark trousers, and woven straw bag. But now, in the context of the limousine and the expectant crowd, she carried an undeniable aura. Her silver-streaked hair gleamed in the sunlight, and her posture, calm, regal, commanded attention without effort. The gold bangle on her wrist caught the light, a subtle reminder of her understated elegance. Inside, the staff froze. Claire's smile faltered, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. She clutched the edge of a counter, her knuckles whitening. Ethan, standing nearby, let out a soft gasp, his phone slipping slightly in his hand. The other associates exchanged glances, confusion and disbelief flickering across their faces. The woman they had ignored, whose halting English and simple attire had marked her as insignificant in their eyes, was the VIP they had been preparing to impress. Ms. Harper, unaware of the morning's events, stepped forward with a beaming smile. She extended her hand, her voice warm and reverent. "Madame Lynn, it's an honor to welcome you to our flagship store. We've been eagerly awaiting your visit." Lynn returned the handshake, her grip firm but gentle, her smile as serene as it had been that morning. "Thank you, Ms. Harper," she said, her voice steady despite the faint accent. "Your store is as beautiful as I'd heard." Her words were polite, but there was a weight to them, a quiet intensity that seemed to linger in the air. The staff stood in a semicircle, their earlier excitement replaced by a tense silence. Claire's face flushed, her eyes darting to the floor as she recalled her dismissive "one moment" and the way she had turned away. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his earlier comment about the jacket's exclusivity echoing in his mind like a misstep. The associate who had smirked and whispered, "Probably just browsing," stood rigid, her red lipstick stark against her paling cheeks. They all felt the shift, the unspoken realization that they had misjudged someone of immense significance. Lynn's gaze swept across the room, calm but piercing. For a moment, it seemed as if she might acknowledge the morning's slight. Her eyes lingered briefly on Claire, then Ethan, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned to Ms. Harper, gesturing toward the store's interior. "May we discuss the collaboration? I'm eager to learn more about your vision." "Of course," Ms. Harper replied, her enthusiasm undimmed. She led Lynn toward a private office at the back of the store, the glass doors closing softly behind them. The staff remained frozen, their whispers resuming only when Lynn was out of sight. "Did you know?" one associate hissed to another. "No one said it was her," Ethan muttered, his voice low. "She didn't look like... she was just..." Claire said nothing, her hands trembling slightly as she rearranged a stack of scarves, her earlier confidence replaced by a gnawing unease. The others glanced toward the office, where silhouettes moved behind frosted glass. The weight of their oversight hung heavy, a mistake they couldn't undo. Outside, the limousine waited, its presence a silent testament to Lynn's stature. Inside, the boutique's polished veneer seemed to dull slightly, as if the morning's events had exposed a crack in its flawless facade. The staff returned to their tasks, but their movements were mechanical, their smiles strained. They knew the meeting in the office would shape more than just a business deal. It would reveal whether their actions that morning had consequences they couldn't yet foresee. Lynn, seated in the office, remained composed, her smile unchanged. She carried no grudge, no need for retribution. Her power lay not in confrontation, but in the quiet truth of who she was and what she would demand from those who wished to carry her name. The VIP office at Maison Elegance was a sanctuary of understated luxury, a stark contrast to the bustling showroom beyond its frosted glass doors. Soft light filtered through a single tall window, illuminating a sleek mahogany table at the room's center. Plush chairs upholstered in cream leather flanked it, and a vase of white orchids added a touch of elegance to the minimalist decor. The air carried a faint scent of lavender, calming yet refined, as if the space itself had been curated to impress without overwhelming. On the table sat a tray with a silver teapot, porcelain cups, and a small plate of macarons, their pastel colors a nod to the boutique's aesthetic. Madame Lin sat across from Ms. Harper, the store's director, her posture relaxed yet commanding. Her beige linen blouse and simple trousers seemed almost defiant in their simplicity against the opulence of the room. Her straw bag rested on the floor beside her, its woven texture a quiet reminder of her roots. Ms. Harper, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blazer and pencil skirt, leaned forward slightly, her hands folded neatly as she spoke with measured enthusiasm. "We're thrilled at the prospect of carrying your collection. Madame Lin," Ms. Harper began, her voice warm but professional. "Your designs align perfectly with Sterling & Cody's vision of timeless luxury. Our customers will be captivated by the artistry of Lin Atelier." She gestured to a tablet on the table, displaying images of Lin's latest collection, flowing silk dresses with intricate embroidery, tailored coats with subtle lotus motifs, and scarves that seemed to shimmer like water under moonlight. Lin inclined her head, her smile soft but unreadable. "Thank you, Ms. Harper. Your words are kind. I, too, am excited about the possibility of this partnership." Her English, though accented, was deliberate, each word chosen with care. She paused, her eyes briefly scanning the room before returning to the director. "But I believe a partnership is more than designs. It is about shared values." Ms. Harper nodded eagerly, unaware of the weight behind Lin's words. "Absolutely. Sterling & Co. prides itself on excellence, both in product and service. We strive to create an experience that's as exceptional as the pieces we sell." Lin's smile deepened, but there was a glint in her eyes, a quiet intensity that seemed to shift the air. She leaned forward slightly, her hands resting lightly on the table. "This morning," she said, her voice steady, "I visited your store as a customer, not as a designer. I wanted to see how Maison Elegance welcomes those who walk through its doors." The director's smile faltered, just for a moment, her brow creasing slightly. "Oh, I hope you found the experience to your liking," she said, her tone still polished but now tinged with curiosity. "Our team is trained to provide personalized service to every guest." Lin's expression remained serene, betraying no hint of the morning's slights. She didn't mention the dismissive glance from Claire, the curt response from Ethan, or the smirk from the associate at the counter. Instead, she tilted her head, her gaze steady. "Your store is beautiful," she said. The displays, the ambiance. It speaks of care, but I wonder—" She paused, letting the silence settle like a gentle challenge. "Do your salespeople treat all customers as carefully as you treat me now?" The question hung in the air, simple yet piercing. Ms. Harper's smile froze, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the tablet. She opened her mouth to respond, then hesitated, as if sensing the depth of Lin's inquiry. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken implications. Lin's eyes, warm but unflinching, held the director's gaze, inviting her to reflect rather than deflect. I trust our team strives to uphold our standards," Ms. Harper said at last, her voice less certain now. "But if there was any oversight, I assure you, it's not reflective of our values." Lin nodded, her expression softening but not relenting. "I believe you," she said, "but values are not just words, agains. They are actions. They are the way a customer feels when they ask for a jacket and no one listens. Her voice was gentle, almost conversational, but each word landed with precision. Ms. Harper's face paled slightly, realization dawning. She straightened, her hands smoothing her skirt as if to steady herself. Madam Lynn, if anything happened this morning, Lynn raised a hand, her gesture graceful but firm, stopping the director mid-sentence. There is no need, she said, but I am not here to point fingers. I am here to build something meaningful, but for that, I have one condition. She reached for her bag, pulling out a slim folder containing the contract. She opened it, her fingers tracing the pages with the same care she might give to a piece of silk. My designs, she continued, are for everyone, not just those who look a certain way or speak a certain language. I want my line sold only in stores where kindness is the first language. Where every customer, no matter their appearance or accent, is treated with respect. She slid the contract across the table, her eyes meeting Ms. Harper's. Can Maison Elegance be that store? The director stared at the contract, then back at Lynn, her expression a mix of admiration and unease. She nodded slowly, her voice quieter now. Yes, Madame Lynn, we will ensure it. Lynn's smile returned, warm and genuine. Then we have much to create together, she said, her tone light but resolute. She extended her hand, sealing the moment not with triumph, but with purpose. As they stood to leave the office, the weight of Lynn's words lingered. Ms. Harper knew the conversation was one her team would never forget, a lesson delivered not in anger, but in the quiet power of a woman who understood that true elegance began with the heart. The days following Madame Lynn's visit to Maison Elegance were a quiet reckoning for the boutique. The contract with Sterling & Co. had been signed, securing Lynn Atelier's exclusive capsule collection for their stores, but the agreement came with more than legal clauses. It carried a mandate, one that resonated through every corner of the flagship location. Madame Lynn's condition, that kindness be the first language of any store carrying her designs, had left an indelible mark, not just on the director, Miss Harper, but on the entire team. The morning after the meeting, Ms. Harper called an all-staff briefing before the store opened. The showroom, usually alive with the clink of champagne flutes and the hum of customer chatter, was silent, its marble floors reflecting the early light. The sales associates stood in a semicircle, their black uniforms crisp, but their expressions uneasy. Claire, the young woman who had dismissed Lynn, fidgeted with her name tag, her usual confidence absent. Ethan, who had brushed off Lynn's request with a comment about exclusivity, stood with his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the floor. The associate who had smirked and whispered stood nearby, her red lipstick a stark contrast to her subdued demeanor. Ms. Harper stood at the center, her usual polished poise tempered by a gravity that commanded attention. Yesterday, she began, her voice steady but firm, we had the privilege of hosting Madame Lynn, a designer whose work defines artistry and integrity, but we also had a lesson, one we cannot ignore. She recounted Lynn's morning visit, her unassuming appearance, and the way she had been overlooked. The staff shifted uncomfortably, some exchanging glances, others avoiding eye contact altogether. We failed to see her, Ms. Harper continued, and in doing so, we failed to uphold the values we claim to represent. The director announced immediate changes. A comprehensive retraining program would begin that week, focusing not just on product knowledge or sales techniques, but on empathy and inclusivity. Every person who walks through these doors, she said, is a guest, not a transaction. Their accent, their attire, their language, they don't define their worth. We do, by how we treat them. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over the team like a call to action. For Claire, the consequences were more ITEA system, more specific. Her eyes, bright with curiosity, scanned the racks of designer clothing, lingering on a red jacket that caught her interest. She approached a young sales associate, Claire, and asked in halting English, "Excuse me, I look... jacket? Red one?" Claire, barely glancing at her, dismissed her with a curt, "One moment," before turning to a more stylish customer. Another associate, noticing Lynn's simple attire, whispered to a colleague with a smirk, probably just browsing. Lynn waited, unnoticed. As other customers were promptly served, after a time she gave a small nod, turned, and left the store without another word. Madame Lynn's quiet exit was not the end of her story. That afternoon, she returned to Maison Elegance as the honored guest, stepping out of a limousine to the shock of the staff who had disregarded her. Ms. Harper, the director, greeted her warmly, unaware of the morning's slight. In the VIP office, Lynn's grace shone through as she refrained from mentioning the earlier dismissal, instead posing a pointed question to Ms. Harper. "Do your salespeople treat all customers as carefully as you treat me now?" The silence that followed was heavy, her words a subtle challenge to the store's values. Before signing the contract, Lynn added a condition. Her line would only be sold in stores where kindness was the first language. The impact of her visit rippled through Maison Elegance. Harper initiated mandatory retraining on empathy and inclusivity. Claire, who had dismissed Lynn, was reassigned to a multicultural branch requiring bilingual skills, a humbling shift. A portrait of Madame Lynn was hung in the store's main area, beside a quote, "Respect every voice, no matter the accent." A video of Lynn's serene departure from the store went viral, shared widely on social media, not for her silent rebuke, but for the universal truth it carried. Kindness needs no translation. Her influence reshaped the store's culture, ensuring that every customer, regardless of appearance or speech, was treated with dignity. Lynn's legacy was not just her designs, but a reminder that true elegance begins with respect for all.